This is Danny, a pretty average filmmaker. And this is a story of betrayal. Allow me to explain. Back in early 2018, Danny bought his first cinema camera, the Canon C200. Small, powerful, and affordable. It was truly a revolutionary camera for its time. A camera that would over time grow near and dear to Danny's heart. Not that dear. Camera Danny would go on to create hundreds of projects with over the next several years. But April of 2021, the great lords of the Canon realm would be awakened as Danny would bite into the apple of new age tech. The SONY FX3. Mirrorless, compact, impeccable low light. To Danny, it felt like a cold stone, gotta have it. But it would prove to be a grave mistake. You see, the very first shoot, Danny would bring both his Canon and now his new Sony camera as an air quotes B cam. The antagonized Canon lords would cast a curse on Danny's tripod head as he hiked up the side of a 20-foot cliff to snag a crispy top-down shot of the road. As Danny approached the summit, C200 hitched on shoulder, the cursed tripod head would suddenly become loose, releasing the C200 to inevitably fall to its untimely death. With swallowed tears and yet a tall task at hand, Danny pushed on, completing the project with the new Sony FX3. Now, after one full month of shooting on the FX3, I'd like to apologize to commenter Scott McBean. You're not just another guy talking to the camera about the camera. So I'm sorry because in the name of irony, today, I am just another guy. Welcome to my review of the Sony FX3. What started out as a nice, easy week of me just doing this sit-down review, nice, quick, simple YouTube video for the week, ended up me like procrastinating on this side joke, which eventually turned into me spending like 4 days on that intro. So for long-time viewers of the Danny Diverts channel, even though this is a special day because I don't do gear reviews, this is my first time doing a camera review video in 2 years. So I don't want you to think that just because you have the camera that I have, you're gonna be able to make the same looking images that I have. I'm not trying to sell you on this camera. Like, you gotta learn the other stuff in advance. That being said, let's get into the review finally after probably like 3 or 4 minutes of nonsense. So I wanna talk about how I've been using the Sony FX3, the pros, the cons, who it's for, who it's not for. I would have it in my hand showing you, but it's my only camera now, so I'm using it to film this. But lens-wise, I've been mainly using the 24-70 with it. I've been shooting everything in the PP8 profile, which is the S-Log3 and the S-Gamut3.Cine. I've just been shooting everything like this because I took some time at the beginning to really like create a nice look, a LUT, for that profile. So I just shoot everything in it and I slap my LUTs over top of it, and I don't have to worry about doing heavy color grading on every single shot that I take now. Quick little plug, you can buy those S-Log3 LUTs down in my description below. So let's talk about the good. What is great about the Sony FX3? Having gone down the traditional cinematographer route, I'm so used to carrying around big heavy camera setups, and with that comes a lot more stress. It takes a lot more time to set up shots. Just to set up one particular shot might take me like 15 minutes to get like the huge tripod leg set up and everything. What I've been loving with the Sony FX3 is that it's so small and compact with a powerful image that's comparable to any cinema camera that I've used to this date. So it's been a huge pro just being able to put this camera wherever I want, super quick, super easily, swinging on a gimbal. Now for me, going back to one-man band productions, going back to a more run and gun style, it's so nice having a small package where I'm making up time. I'm getting more shots, more angles than I would have gotten if I had a bigger setup. I mentioned it already, it's incredibly powerful. Any cinema camera, like, it's very hard to tell the difference at this point between this, like a C500, Ursa Mini, like everything kind of looks very similar these days. It's all super high quality with minor, issues here and there for every other camera. Like for this size of this thing, the mobility of this thing, like you can't talk bad about the quality. So my big draw for this camera, the main reason why I love this camera is that it has dual native ISO. I always shoot at native ISO. It's the ISO that your camera performs the best at. It's the ISO that gives your camera the most amount of dynamic range that's possible of capturing. So for the Sony FX3, it has a native ISO at 640, which a lot of cinema cameras are hovering around 640, 800 ISO. But the unique thing about the Sony FX3 is that you also have another native ISO at 12,800. So you can be in a super dimly lit situation, bump that ISO up to 12,800 and get a really clean dynamic image. So again, going back to the one-man band operation, not being able to set up huge lighting productions, being able to jack your ISO up to 12,800 and have a clean image is super valuable and probably my favorite draw for the Sony FX3. I've gotten comments on my videos like, oh, image looks great if I miss those Canon colors. Like, these colors look like absolutely amazing. If I put this image right next to a Canon image, you wouldn't be able to tell which one's which. I'll admit the older video cameras that Sony was putting out didn't have the best colors, but now today what they're putting out, it's just comparable to anything else. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just being a total like snob. Dynamic range, superb. You could shoot into the sun and you're still getting a ton of information, the highlights. Other than the fact it comes with the top handle, with the XLR inputs, my draw to it over the Sony a7S III, even though it has a similar sensor, was that it has these cinema function buttons all around it. It has the built-in fans, so it's really easy to use. It's perfect for someone with a filmmaker mindset versus a photography mindset. I mentioned the smallness of it earlier, and that plays a giant part in putting it on a gimbal. A lot of people are probably gonna get this camera as a B cam or a gimbal specific camera, and they should, because it's perfect. It's got the flip out screen. You don't need to attach monitors. The autofocus on it is absolutely insane. I use autofocus on that entire cycling video that you saw. Tracking a biker going down the road, not ever having to worry about the autofocus once, was so key for me, especially operating as the one-man band. I didn't have to have an AC pulling my focus. I didn't have to lock the focus at a specific point. Like, I was shooting that entire biking sequences, going down hills, riding in the back of a truck at f2.8. All right, so now that we got through all the good, it's time to talk about all the bad, which is, you know, where do we even start? Just a long list of horrible things about this camera. A few things on here that are like pretty nitpicky, honestly. I don't know why anyone would ever complain about any of today's cameras, not necessarily just the FX3, just what we're able to create as filmmakers these days. Would any of us even be filmmakers if it wasn't for modern technology? Like 20 years ago, I'm not like trying to get into film video right off the bat. It's just such a harder barrier to entry than it is today. So I think for a lot of us, why would we ever complain about today's cameras? They're giving us a chance to be filmmakers. All right, so even though the FX3 has the built-in fans, my FX3 is overheating. I have the fan on auto. I have, you know, all the settings right for it to not overheat. But when I'm doing these long talking head sessions that are lasting 30, 45 minutes, my camera's starting to overheat. It did shut down on me one time. Granted, it is super hot in this room. I'm pouring sweat right now. I have to turn my AC unit off, this like tubular thing. We don't have central AC. So it gets hot in this room. So honestly, I don't blame my camera for shutting down the heat, but I would like it to not shut down. No SDI input, not a big deal. I can use the HDMI. I don't even know why I wrote this down. Irrelevant. The mic holder on the handle is too big for this microphone. Not sure the girth of the microphone. I need something thicker, meatier, if you will. I mentioned this earlier. To shoot in the highest codec, you need to specifically purchase Sony Tough cards, which A, are super expensive, and B, it's just always on back order, so I can't even get them. So it doesn't look like I'll be shooting in the highest codec maybe ever and just sticking to normal SD cards. At the end of the day, you know, the quality doesn't really matter, you know. At a certain point, you're just uploading videos to the internet. When you're uploading to YouTube, your video is just gonna get super muddy and compressed, so it's not like I even care about the quality at this point. My biggest negative, no internal NDs. I'm super used to having internal neutral density within my Canon C200. You just click a button and that comes out. I use the Polar Pro ND filter on the front. It's not a big deal. The 2 seconds it takes me to unscrew it off the front of the lens is gonna make or break my entire shoot. Editing these files in Premiere, it's a little sluggish. I have a pretty quick iMac. Maybe it's Premiere. Premiere is just notoriously slow, but you know, I'd like the workflow on that to be a little smoother. I don't think that's the Sony FX3's fault. I think it's more of me sticking with Adobe for as long as I have. And my last drawback is the FX3 doesn't look pro. Now, you know, is that my really fragile male ego speaking, that I'm not walking around this big beastly cinema camera telling the world that I know what I'm doing? Probably like 2 years ago, I would have cared about that. You know, I had my insecurities. I wanted to be known as a filmmaker. Now I'd rather my camera be smaller and be less noticed. I don't have random strangers coming up to me constantly like, yo, you shooting a movie? You guys shooting a movie? Yeah, dude, we're shooting a movie with me and like one other person. So maybe it's a good thing that doesn't look pro. I'm able to remain inconspicuous. Moving on into our section of who's this camera for, who's it not for. If you're going to get this camera as your main camera, it is definitely for the solo filmmaker, the adventure outdoor activity filmmaker who needs to be quick on the move, who is doing run and gun stuff, doesn't have time to set up big extravagant lighting situations. Minimalist filmmakers, if you're looking to downgrade your gear like I am, create less stress for yourself when you're going on shoots, having more clarity for the actual story and the concept that you're shooting versus having to deal with all these gear issues, this camera is absolutely perfect for you. If you're looking for a B camera, something small, powerful that fits on a gimbal, this camera is also for you. So wide range of people this camera works for. So who is this camera not for? If you're always working with big crews, this isn't the camera for you. You want a cinema camera with more production assets to it. Like you'll want an SDI port, which this camera doesn't have. Sony FX3 is the perfect camera for me. So if you're a filmmaker similar to me, you want to do the things that I'm doing, this camera is going to be perfect for you. As someone who's shot on, you know, the Alexa Minis, Reds, like whatever camera, you name it, I've had the most fun I've ever had shooting with this camera. It's so simple, so easy to bring around. I'm less stressed overall on shoots because I'm not dealing with all this extra equipment. It's just a very minimalistic package, and I feel like I've become a better filmmaker because of it. All right, so next time I do a camera review will be another 2-3 years from now. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching. I love you.